It's either it goes out with a bang, it goes out with a whimper. My pretty firm call this evening, and I hope that I'm right, is that should it go, it's going to go with a whimper, not a bang.
Hello and welcome back to the CRA channel. We've had a good break and we hope that you did too, but it's good to be back. We will be resuming with our normal schedule of programming. That's a new video every weekday morning at 7 a.m. We're still getting out of first gear, so we're going to start this year with a short extract from a webinar held exclusively for CRA clients towards the end of last year. Enjoy.
I'll assure you that the ANC understands the problem very well and feels it perhaps even more acutely than many people, I suppose, other than the unemployed. Just you use that number, so let's stick with unemployment. There's never been, in my experience, any illusion on the part of the ANC that the labour market's in a good place, or a sense that we're doing well, or a belief that jobs are being created, or any naivety about the political consequences of not creating jobs. It's all been there. The analysis has been very good. And yet, and then, you think, well, that's good because, if that was you or me, we knew there was a problem. We knew what it was. We might do something about it. And right there is the reason why I think many South Africa observers and many in business are often surprised by the behavior of the ANC. Because the problem's obvious, solution's obvious, and the solution's not taken. And in fact, in the last week, I made this very point to a chap who helps to govern the country. And on this, in fact, on the jobs thing. And I said, is this not, really? I mean, you've got such an enormous rate of unemployment, and you will not entertain a single thought about labour market policy. And the answer always is the same thing, that it comes down to a belief system and ideology in the end for the ANC, and that the shifts in terms of policy reform that would be needed to address the problem are simply an ideological bridge too far. And that's not an unusual thing. It's not unique to the ANC. Governments come and go. Political parties lose control of countries all the time, just as the ANC is losing control of South Africa now. And it's seldom because they didn't know or couldn't understand or something took them by surprise. It's because it was just a bridge too far to bring about the necessary reforms, and therefore they get displaced from power and replaced by someone who could. So my answer for you is, yeah, they understand terribly well. That was my experience my whole years at the CRA, and despite that good understanding, never showed serious inclination to address the problem. And the reason was, for me, stood out clearly early on and increasingly over the years, was ideological.
Enjoying this analysis? Click here to sign up for our 30-day free trial for more content from the CRA.
Nicholas in the Q&A asks, at what point does trust in the political process give into more dramatic measures in an attempt by certain parties to address the perception of terminal rot in the governance of our country? Thanks for that, Nicholas. I mean, I suppose the theme there is, perhaps there's a perception that the democratic process is not actually functioning very well. We saw very low rates of voter participation, John, in the elections this year. And also, if you track our data, can see that violent protests have gone up over the last decade, notwithstanding the dramatic events that we saw in KZN in July. So do you think that there is perhaps also more systemic challenges here, that not just kind of the normal kind of political dramas, but that the actual South African system is under significant strain?
It certainly is. We also track in our numbers the increasing rates of violent protests, as you say. Often we think from people who are politically engaged and wish to see certain political outcomes, but do not believe that the formal political process is delivering those outcomes. And outside of the political process, you resort to other means, which can be protests, for example. I wonder if Nicholas's question maybe also is directed at the idea that what the risk of a coup is. It sounds a little bit like the question is asking, when will some people get so fed up with the lack of progress, the terminal rot, as you put it, that they say, enough is enough, let's do something about this, overthrow the government and impose hopefully a more efficient and competent government. I think that risk is still remote, but I don't think it is as remote as it was before July. My sense is that, many parties observed what happened in July. I don't think that was an attempt at a coup, an insurrection, or an overthrow, but certainly some parties who observed that would have seen the lack of response from the government in addressing the violence and the lawlessness, and might begin to muse about the possibilities of such an overthrow. So in short, I think the chances are still low, but not as low as they once were.
And how will the ANC also respond to these threats, both at the ballot box and potentially in terms of growing civil unrest? Do you think that there's a risk that the ANC might be reluctant to let go of the levers of power and may turn to more authoritarian means of staying in power?
I wonder. I think that the ANC, there is a strong democratic philosophy running through the ANC. I think it would be quite a big step for the ANC to go full autocratic. If you consider the kind of country that South Africa is at the moment, it is an extremely free society. You can say things in South Africa that you can't say in any other African country, and you can express yourself very freely. And that is certainly to the ANC's credit, I think, that it has not closed down the spaces for free expression, political, artistic, and of other kinds. And that, for me, is one reason why I think that the ANC is not going to turn autocratic. Another reason is that turning autocratic, I think, does take quite a lot of determination and strategic focus, which at the moment, looking at the state the organization is in, I don't think it has got. It doesn't seem to have a very clear drive towards maintaining power. It seems to be accepting of the democratic process. In those instances where it lost power in the metros, it has accepted the results and the outcomes, notwithstanding a little bit of turmoil in eThekwini. But I think overall it has respected the outcomes of the democratic process, and I think it will continue to do so.
And also the armed forces are quite weak and thankfully fairly depoliticized. But Frans, I mean, in the absence of an authoritarian turn, perhaps we could see a much more radical policy agenda being implemented. Some people might say policy agenda is already quite radical. But for example, an acceleration of the EWC process. Frans, do you care to comment on what we've just spoken about?
Yeah, I do. I think the democratic process is doing very well. And the country is badly governed, unemployment's very high, and the ANC lost an election. I mean, that's the point. I mean, that's why we did what happened in '94, so that if this point was reached, government was corrupt and incompetent and people were unhappy, something would change. It happened. The violent protest action, of course, you can't advocate for such things, but it is a pressure release valve in any society. Look what happened after 18 months of lockdown. No major protest actions. The whole thing blew up. It blew up under Bheki Cele's watch. And a few years back, I think when he was police commissioner, he said that he's not going to tolerate this protest action anymore. The police will put a stop to it. And we thought it was an incredibly foolish thing to do, because you might create the veneer of stability for a while, but the pressure builds under the surface, and with no release valves of sort of running violent protests South Africa sees, you'll get a detonation, which is what happened in Natal. On the ANC and its future, I think it goes very quietly and meekly, sort of crawls off into the night to sort of curl up into a little ball and die. When it lost in the Western Cape a long way back, it just crawled away. I mean, it's tried to destabilize the Cape since then, here and there, not very successfully. The Kuruleni was lost now and run by a pretty tough lot in the ANC, and they meekly kind of handed over the keys to the office and walked away. And in Gauteng, where I saw quite a lot over the years, the ANC, when I started, was very strong in Gauteng. It's now at 50%. It gave up all its cities even a few years ago. And there's just absolutely nothing by way of firm, determined action to reverse the trends that create that. So if it's, it's either it goes out with a bang, goes out with a whimper. My pretty firm call this evening, and I hope that I'm right, is that should it go, it's going to go with a whimper, not a bang.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this discussion, you might want to become a client of the CRA. We have a range of services and reports available for our clients, and we're also running a 30-day free trial where you can sample all of our content for free. There's a link in the description below. Also, let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Do you think that the ANC will go quietly if it were to be defeated at the ballot box? My name is David Ansara. This is the CRA. Until next time, take care.